Hello everyone, welcome to Foreign Farming in the Philippines. So this is the much anticipated year-to-date and final quarterly profit and loss for the farm here. Well, the final one for this year anyway. I hope this lighting is good. It's, as you can, I don't know, maybe you can tell, maybe you can't, but it's dark. And I've got that if I turn the bedroom light on, then it's just the lighting's really funny. So I've got the light that comes with a fan and the fan light on, and hopefully this will all come out clear enough. I didn't tell someone I was making a video, and she thinks she's sneaking in here to get a chair.
I will get the chair. I will use this for.
Okay. Anyway, now this is New Year's Eve, and soon to be New Year's morning. It's 8:40 in the evening, and I knew if I didn't get this done this evening that I wouldn't get it done till tomorrow. So that's why I'm doing it this evening. I wanted to. It's probably not going to be posted until tomorrow morning, but I wanted it done nonetheless. So it's been, as everything is in the Philippines, this has been quite the journey this last year. The vast majority of you know the struggles that we've had here with ASF, COVID, and then Typhoon Odette. There's been some challenges, and there was some learning that needed to be done on my part. My farming / ranching experience in the States did not translate well here. Some things did, some things did not, and so I've had to learn a great deal in the Philippines, and I have. And we have finally come to we finally come to the place where we've got it figured out for our particular situation. Now, for someone else, it might be something different, but for us, it has turned out really well. So I wanted to begin by reviewing the other quarters, the first, second, and third quarters. I restarted that so it won't be too long of a, if the transfer somehow fails, I won't lose too much of it. So I wanted to, we'll just real quick, we'll review the profit and loss for the first, second, third, and fourth quarters, and then I'll do the fourth quarter, and then we'll do a total for the year. So the first quarter was, as many of you recall, we had a lot of people working here. We had Ippy and Consing and Jen and Tatai, and more often than not Nerio as well. 4 full-time employees and 1 part-time, let's put it that way. And the labor expenses were eating us up. And that's when we came to I came to the realization that it was time to do a bit of fine-tuning and change course a bit, and so we did. Labor is cheap in the Philippines, but it's not free. And it adds up as the month goes along. It adds up. So the first quarter was a loss of 37,775 pesos. Now that might not seem like a lot to most people, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But to us, that was a pretty big chunk of money going out. It was basically our YouTube salary, and didn't leave us much left over to live off of. Even though we had some sales, the holidays in the beginning of that quarter, New Year's, and it was just the holidays in the first quarter of this year kept us down. Let's put it that way. So the second quarter was when we began to, well, first off, we, as much as we hated to do it, we let Consing and Ippy go because it was glaringly apparent that we had to cut, I don't know, overhead, whatever you want to call it. We had to cut those salaries. And even though Consing and Ippy had both worked here for a long time, Consing even more than Ippy, it was with a heavy heart that we let them go. Now, luckily now they're both working for Mike and Brian, so they have found gainful employment somewhere else. But we let them go in the second quarter. And so in the second quarter, it was basically Tatai and Jinjin and, you know, Marcel and I as well. And sales picked up a bit also. And so we actually made a profit in the second quarter of 12,464 pesos. And from shelling out almost 40,000 pesos as a loss in a quarter, and I didn't even look and see what the last quarter of the previous year looked like, but I'm fairly certain it was similar. The labor was just getting us. The third quarter was much better. Jin went home, and so she didn't work all that quarter, and so it was basically down to Tatai and myself, with very occasionally Nerio would help out. So the labor costs were again further cut, and that was a big reason why we made even more profit in the third quarter. And sales were excellent. And we made 31,932 pesos in the third quarter, which is just an almost 180-degree turnaround from the first quarter. And by the third quarter, we were harvesting the row crops and not replanting, in row crops anyway. And the third quarter is when we began the conversion to squash and bananas, serious conversion to squash and bananas. And we also did the plateau during that time. Tata and I cleared, you know, what we got cleared, which is a little over half of the plateau, and planted that. And the weeds have, you know, it always takes a bit of fine tuning here and there. We still have a weed problem on the plateau, but it's for right now it's not really solvable because we have all those little leftover stumps and from the small trees up there, and they all need to be taken out before we can put plastic down. I had thought that we could overwhelm the weeds by planting thickly enough, but a little bit of miscommunication between Jinjin and I. They weren't really planted thick enough, and hence they weren't thick enough to keep the weeds choked out, and as it turned out, the weeds choked out the squash. We did make quite a bit of money actually off that squash, but it's still producing, but just a minuscule amount because it's in such competition with the weeds. In fact, there's really no competition. The weeds are winning. But we made profit off of the squash that we grew on the plateau, and the bananas are still there. We planted a couple hundred bananas on the plateau, and they're coming along. So all these figures that I'm giving to you are only a small amount are from banana sales. Now there's some pretty big chunks for banana tree sales that we sold to Mike and Brian, but the actual banana sales, it's how many is a lot, how many is not a lot. We sold a lot of bananas, but I think in the compared to what we're going to sell next year, this year, tomorrow's the new year, so compared to what we're going to sell, let's say this year, it'll be just a drop in the bucket, because we have over 500 trees that are going to be producing this coming year, so it's going to be substantial amounts of bananas raised here. So let's go on to the fourth quarter, and I'll give you those numbers. I'll restart this real quick. Okay, so sales, and look, we had a lot of sales here that I didn't document because Marcel went and did the sales herself. It was a struggle for all of us to go. Charlie, it just wasn't good having Charlie with us. He would get bored and fussy, and Marcel has to do the sales because she's fluent in the language and I'm not. And so Marcel had to go, and me and Charlie really didn't. So had a lot of sales that, and you can't sell, and mainly I'm talking about squash. You can't sell and video at the same time. So we had a lot of sales that we just didn't document. A few times Marcel took her friend, a Kagawad here, took her with her so that she was freed up a bit to do some video. But I don't know, there was a half a dozen, 10 trips that she did and didn't video it. So in anticipation of the trolls saying, oh, well, where's all the sales? They happened, but they just weren't all videoed. And we had some sales from the farm here, but the door-to-door sales for this last quarter were basically non-existent, other than the fish. The fish we still sold from here, from the farm. But we didn't take anything and sell it door-to-door, mainly because we didn't have employees to take them around, and it was just not necessary, because as I've said many times, it's not a sales problem, it's a production problem. We could sell 10 times the amount of produce that we are selling easily, and that's the goal that we're trying to get to. So the sales, I gotta read my own writing here. I've only broken these down into 3 categories. The veggies, which is the squash, and just mainly the squash. A very few other. I mean, we did have some Oppo squash. Very few cucumbers. We still were getting onions off of field 4, the last of them, and okra. We were still selling a bit of that. But the veggies was mainly the squash. And those sales were 55,310 pesos. we sold a pretty good amount of squash. The bananas were 41,770 pesos, but 30,000 of that were trees that we sold to Mike and Brian. So only 11,770 pesos worth of banana fruit that we raised. That's what we sold. But it was it was something. Those little trees were produced on the farm, and so they go into the ledger. And the fish, we only sold 1,880 pesos worth of fish. And that was just a few die-hard customers that really enjoy our fish, and they come by. And Tatai, God bless him, will go out into the pond and throw the net out there and catch him a couple kilos of fish. We didn't have any fingerlings for sale, and the crayfish have taken up all the space in the tanks, and so fish sales are just, I give Tatai the money and just say thanks, but it was a sale even though we didn't get the money for them, because look, Tatai, I don't feed those fish, and Tatai's the one that caught them. Just give Tatai the money. Gives him a little bit extra spending money. And so that totals out to 98,960 pesos in sales, which I am tickled pink about. Even though it's orders of magnitude less than what I anticipate moving forward, that's almost 100K in sales in 3 months. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm really digging it, especially now that I can clearly see what's going to happen, and production-wise. The labor, look, we only had basically, it was Tatai working, and I think Nerio worked a total of, well, let's see, Nerio. Well, 4,470 pesos worth in 3 months. So that's that's basically 2 weeks full time. But Nerio worked like 10 days, 12 days. Well, it was 47. So Nerio probably worked 14 days. I just have the total. I don't have the days that he worked. I just have the total that we paid him. So for the most part, it was just Tatai. And Tatai really hasn't worked for us for the last month, almost all of December. He was working either for doing stuff for Mike and Brian, or he's working for Pete. Excuse me. So our total labor for the fourth quarter was 25,050 pesos. Way down from, I mean, you guys, if you are really curious, and you can just go back and look at the labor costs in the first and second quarter. Crazy difference. From over 70K to 25, yeah, big difference. Our expenses, now look, the expenses are gas, plastic, fertilizer, they call it string here, but it's basically what they tie up boxes with when you go to the store here. A couple rolls of that, some of the black string, but just, I think, like one roll of that. We didn't use very much of that. So anyway, all the expenses were 11,160 168 pesos, for a total labor and all the other expenses, 36,218 pesos. Much, much less than they were in the first and second quarter, and even the third quarter. So the net profit, what's left after everything else for the fourth quarter, is 62,742 pesos. That's to me, that's a very, very good thing. And I'll put this in a bubble right here, quarter by quarter, of just to put it in one little spot. So you can see it. So you can see that slowly fine-tuning this, as I knew we would this year, and picking up steam. It's just, you know, this. Let me jump on to the year-to-date profit. So for the whole year, the profit was 69,363 pesos. Not, you know, not anything to write home about, but when you consider that big loss in the first quarter, and we didn't make much at all in the second quarter, but look, you know, 20,000 plus per month coming in on the farm, and I see that at least quadrupling moving forward. This farm is indeed, we finally turned the corner. We're doing it now, and I'm just I'm happy about it. It's been quite the little struggle. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming along with us on this ride. We basically made that money with none of the new bananas. What would you say, being online now, with none of the new bananas producing anything. And a lot of the, you know, I did, I don't know, more than half the labor to get the new bananas in the ground. I dug all those mounds in the fields that the bananas were transplanted into. Tatai didn't do any of that. That was me dancing with the shovel for 4 or 5 hours a day until I just give out and hit it again some other day. What Tatai did planting those new bananas was dig the little bulbs and sometimes small seedlings. He dug those out of the ground and transplanted them and stuck them in the ground. It was a joint effort. But me doing what I did saved us a lot in labor expense. And those bananas will all be, we'll probably get our first harvest from everything that we've planted 6 months from now. 6 to 9 months from now. I mean, the bananas seem to be taking a little bit longer than what Tatai had first said. He said they'd be producing within a year. I don't know. It seems like it's taking a long time for them to get over the shock of being transplanted. It seems like they don't do anything for like 2 months. Some of them even die. But the ones that don't die, they just kind of languish. But after a couple months, they'll send up a new leaf. And you can tell that the roots have taken and they're actually starting to grow again. But that 2 months of dead time, when they're not doing nothing, I think that's going to affect the production quite a bit. But June-ish of this next year, June, July in there, those bananas are going to be rocking. And the bananas in our, I used to call it the mini banana plantation, those are finally coming on. Most of those are Lacatan, so you don't get a lot of kilos, but you get a good price for them. There's, I don't know, dozens of bunches. What do you call them? I guess you'd call them bunches. There's bunches of bunches. There's a lot of clusters, I guess. I don't even know what you call. I guess it is a bunch of bananas. I don't know. I raise them, but I don't know all the terms that go along with it. But there's dozens of those in that quote-unquote banana plantation area, and so those will be harvested within the next couple months, and all that area is doing really well. And the banana trees that were transplanted into the fields doing really good, and as is the squash. Finally, you know, putting the plastic down. I was reticent about putting plastic down and having like 100% coverage. The only thing not being covered was the little hole that we burn in the plastic for the squash plant to come out. They seem to be doing just fine, and so I was worried for nothing. They're all doing really, really well, and we're going to have a buttload of squash. They're blooming and making squash now. There's actually some softball-sized ones already in Field 6, but they're blooming and starting in Field 4 and Field 5, and Field 2. So all three of those fields have little squash started and are coming on. We're going to have tons of squash. Tons, I tell you. And it's a big relief. So for those of you who have come along on this journey and kept the faith, I thank you. And to the trolls, piss on you guys. You idiots have no clue whatsoever what you're talking about. And this is just more of me getting the last laugh. Thank you, everyone. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.